Hello, beautiful souls. How are you? Smile. I hope that you are doing fine wherever you are right now and whatever you are doing. I would like to remind you that life is beautiful and so are you. This is part 2 of our video discussion for our topic, Module 1 or Doing Philosophy. Take note that the purpose of this video is this serves as your learning material in preparation for your first monthly exam. So the extent of its usage will always be dependent on you. But I would like to encourage you to have with you learning materials like pen and paper so as to make use of this video or to maximize its utilization to interact with the learning material. So from time to time, if I throw questions, you can just pause the video and answer or write your responses on these questions in your paper. However, if you choose to answer these questions mentally, okay, just enjoy your free will, or even if you don't want to answer these questions or you just have to entertain this one in your thought, it's always dependent on you because you are an independent learner. Alright, so let me share to you now my screen. So we ended our part 1 yesterday with this slide. But before proceeding further, let's have a quick backtrack of what we've discussed yesterday. So we discussed about the etymological meaning of philosophy, meaning it came from the two Greek words, philos and sophia. Philo means love and sophia means wisdom. So etymologically speaking, philosophy means the love of wisdom. Then we also talk about the different branches of philosophy. Philosophy as a broad subject of inquiry is subdivided into different branches, and each branch has its own specification. But this is to remind you as well that there is no branch of philosophy that is superior over the other. It's not about the superiority of one branch over the other, but it's more about the connectivity of one branch over the other, because all of these branches work together in the realm of philosophy, and all of these branches are actually within us. We experience it or we live it out from time to time, although we are not totally aware that that is exactly a branch of philosophy already. Okay, so for this video, I would like to start in this slide. So Socrates is very popular or famous for his quote, "Know thyself," or his principle, "Know thyself," which relates to a longer statement that an unexamined life is not worth living. Why it's not worth living, and why is there a need to examine our life from time to time? Because according to Socrates, the hard questions we throw unto ourselves are not meant to confuse us. It's not meant to confuse us because it is a moment of discovery about ourselves, specifically those blind spots that we have, those unknown self that we have, and at the same time there is the profound connectedness of ourself when we pause for a moment of silence, or when we pause for a while and look at how things are done. They must be welcome also as a healthy ways of connecting with the complex reality of the world. So what is meant here is the idea of intersubjectivity or interconnectedness, although we are going to discuss this in our succeeding chapter because there is one particular module intended for this. But the very basic idea of intersubjectivity is interconnectedness, that we don't exist by ourselves, but rather we need to have that relational skills with other people around us, and even our relationship with our environment and of the community or the society in general and of the world. So these complex realities help us to unlock the mysteries of life and those questions that we throw to ourselves, that we keep on pondering upon ourselves from time to time. Again, when we speak of philosophy as the love of wisdom, it is the eternal quest for truth, meaning that day by day or from time to time, we throw questions into ourselves that we try to explore its answers, or we try to search for its answers because the very answers to these questions provide meaning to our existence. And when we talk of existence, kindly refer to what branch of philosophy is being referred to. Okay, so at the same time, we can also say that Socrates, for him, true learning is not a blind obedience to the teacher. Say, for example, in the context of student and teacher interaction, the student should not be always following with what the teacher is saying, but rather, because Socrates is not a proponent of blind obedience, rather he encouraged the student to ask questions, which is the very heart or core of philosophy, asking questions. So what is meant by here is true learning is always dialogical. And when we speak of dialogical, we are referring to a conversation. We are referring to a dialogue between a teacher and a student, or a student and the teacher. So in this way, when we say dialogical or conversational or dialogue, it is an avenue of seeking for the truth. That is why sometimes, if you have experienced that one, when you started or when you are going to initiate a conversation and there are things that you want to ask or there are things you want to know about the person, the only way for you to know about it is to ask, or one of the ways of knowing about it is to ask questions. And once the person you're having a conversation with is going to answer you, going to respond to your questions, there might be other questions that you are going to throw. These are follow-up questions. So in a way, when we speak of conversational or dialogical, it has to be lengthy, or it can be lengthy in a way because of the series of questions that we throw. So in a way that the questions or the answers to our questions are highly consequential, because it means that when you give answer to the question, that answer elicits another question or another possible questions. Thus, this needs to be a healthy communication between the two parties. So, conversation or dialogical as an approach or as an inquiry of the subject in philosophy will create a certain kind of relationship or healthy communication between the teacher and the student. And this is not only applicable between the teacher and the student, this can be applicable also in our different areas of life. Let's say, for example, in the family, with our friends, with our colleagues, and with our neighborhood, all areas of relationships in our life. So again, what you have to remember is the idea that dialogical, when we speak of dialogical, it means conversational. So we continue our conversation because the very end goal is our quest for the truth, what we want to know. And speaking of knowledge, kindly refer again for the part 1 of this discussion of what branch of philosophy is being implied by that, or the science of knowing, or the study of knowledge. For Socrates, the only true knowing is called docta ignorantia. Now, what do we mean by docta or doctrine, ignorantia or ignorance? What do we mean by docta ignorantia? This means that it is to know that you do not know. Okay? It is to know that you do not know. And now that you know that you do not know, you are now willing to truly know. So, docta ignorantia, in simpler terms, this is what we mean by learned ignorance. Learned ignorance, learned because you know, ignorance because you don't know. So therefore, docta ignorantia as a learned ignorance, it means to say that you know that you do not know. And because you know that you do not know, then you are opening yourself for the opportunity to know what you do not know. Okay? So that is why philosophy is an eternal quest for truth. Okay? And this docta ignorantia or learned ignorance simply manifests one of the existing realities of our life about No matter how much we know about something, there are always constraints, there are always limitations. And such limitations of knowledge, or what we call as learned ignorance or docta ignorantia, enable us to seek further, to ask questions for that quest for truth. Okay, and this is supported as well with another contention or another idea of Socrates, that the only true wisdom is in knowing that you know nothing. Okay, in knowing that you know nothing, and that is wisdom. So if you know that you know nothing, you have that although you have that certain kind of vulnerability, but there's also that kind of openness to know something. So in the realm of the emptiness of our mind, you are ready to fill in that space of the different knowledge about the world. Again, when you speak of knowledge or the study of knowledge, what branch of philosophy am I referring to? So knowing that you don't know nothing is an opportunity for you to learn something. Okay, so philosophy, and that is why very basic question, although this kind of very basic because we encounter this one from time to time, but this is a very challenging question, like the question of who am I, why am I here, or what am I here for? These questions, who am I and why am I here, it talks about our purpose. It talks about our purpose or direction in life. Thus, it gives meaning to our life. That is why from time to time, as we search for truth, as we ask questions about ourselves, about our existence, about our life, we cannot avoid asking this very basic question of who I am or who am I. And this question also, although very basic, but it can confuse us. It can lead us to a certain state of doubts, a certain state of fear, because the moment you begin to ask this question, who am I, is also the start of journeying yourself, thus living your life. And as you try to answer this question, who am I, it becomes a burden. Why it becomes a burden? Because that question, who am I, tells you that you become the question itself. That is why from time to time, we experience crisis in our life. And when we speak of crisis, we cannot do away with self-doubt. Okay, we doubt about our worth, we doubt our own capabilities, we doubt about our own chances of improving. But nevertheless, this question has to be entertained, because that is a way for us to discover a lot of things about ourselves, which at the moment you did not, or in the previous time, you did not bother to notice. But when you pause and when you begin to entertain these questions, you slowly realize that there are a lot of things in yourself that you did not give, or that you have not given time. And this is the right moment for you to entertain these and look at how you can possibly improve that portion or of yourself. Okay, so philosophy as the eternal quest for truth, it means true knowledge must lead to a real virtue called arete. Arete, or the virtue of perfection. Now, the virtue of perfection or arete, this simply means about excellence. Of course, this can be fortified by our experience, daily life experiences, and it's not enough that you experience something or you submit yourself or you are confronted in a particular situation, but the very purpose of that experience is to unlock the lesson that you are supposed to live. because in every lesson that you discover about your experience is also a navigation to the real meaning of your life or to the meaning of your existence. And as you perfected that one through experience, you are able to have or to attain that kind of knowledge or a virtue about yourself, a reti or the virtue of perfection. Thus, it leads you to wisdom. So, wisdom in this regard is a moral wisdom, not just an intellectual wisdom. So, when we speak of intellectual wisdom, we may possibly refer to our education that we are getting as we go to school, as we learn things in school academically. However, wisdom is not constrained in the curriculum, but rather wisdom is more prevalent in our day-to-day life experiences. That is why it is telling us that we shouldn't contain ourselves in a box. Rather, we have to reach out. We need to relate with other people because our experience of social interaction with other people and with our environment will also unlock us with a lot of possibilities about life. So it tells you a lot of realizations about insights and reflections of how it is to live your life. So the person is a being who is rational. And when we speak of rational, we refer to or it refers to a particular branch of philosophy which talks about science of thinking or science of correct thinking and science of reasoning. Thus, when we say a person is rational, meaning that that person is capable of having correct reasoning, having correct justification. So the person is a being who is rational, and our desire for knowledge must lead to a lifelong process. Lifelong process because if we go back to the meaning of philosophy, it is an eternal quest for truth. No one, regardless of age, say for example, even if you are 50 years old or 60 years old, no one can perfectly claim or can absolutely claim that they totally know themselves. Because even at their age of existence and the wide array of their life experiences, there are still things they need to know. Thus, learned ignorance are the limitations of our knowledge or docta ignorantia. And these things or these not realm of knowledge can also be learned as we interact with other people. That is why it is a lifelong process because we are in a continuous quest for learning. So going back as what Socrates have mentioned before, that the inquiry of philosophy as a subject, it has to be dialogical or conversational, meaning that we submit ourselves to that opportunity to learn from other people as we interact with them. Okay, and it's not enough that you claim to be wise, or it's not enough that you claim that you are knowledgeable of a certain truth or a certain fact, but rather you have to be able to justify or to make certain clarifications in terms that what you are standing for is being questioned by other people. So that is why you are able to present a counter argument of your belief, of your stand. That is the very tenets of dialogical, meaning that it's not enough that you claim something or you provide a certain statement, but rather you're able to ask for justifications. That is why in life, it's not about yes or no. It's not about true or false. It's not about left and right, but rather it's more about justifying or providing yourself an opportunity to express why you have chosen that particular stand. And to take a stand, meaning to say it's a statement that you live something for in life. Okay, and if Socrates had mentioned that the unexamined life is not worth living, that is why we need to know thyself, And in knowing thyself, it goes us to our desire to know. Our desire to know. That is why Aristotle have said that all men by nature desire to know. Okay? All men by nature desire to know. We desire to know because we don't know everything. And when we speak of we don't know everything, what important concept I am referring to? Okay? I have previously discussed that. Yes, you are correct. It means, or we refer to, docta ignorantia, or learned ignorance, or the limitations of our knowledge. That is why we keep on desiring to know. Part of a lifelong process is a reality that we never stop learning, because learning is continuous. Okay, and because learning is continuous, from time to time there's always that discovery about ourselves. This will lead us to a more profound source of knowledge, which we call as wisdom. Wisdom as a value or as a virtue leads us to a life of real virtue, and in the end to a life of real happiness, or eudaimonia. Okay, before I'm going to proceed to my discussion, take note that there are certain terms, or there are important terms being highlighted here. One, we mentioned about Socratic method, or the Elenchus. Okay, the other one is learned ignorance, or how do we call that? Correct, that is docta ignorantia. And the other one is we call it arete. What do you mean by arete? Okay, so you can go back to our previous slide, okay, for the answer to that question, so that I will not also spoon feed you with the facts. So, what is meant by eudaimonia? Now, eudaimonia as a real happiness, take note that when we speak of real happiness or eudaimonia, we are not referring to the happiness or our personal standard of happiness. Sometimes happiness, because our standard of happiness can be very relative, meaning that what makes me happy cannot be what makes you happy. My source of happiness is not your source of happiness. With that, happiness becomes relative, right? But this is not what is meant by eudaimonia, or real happiness, because real happiness transcends our standard of what can make us happy. Real happiness means to say a life well lived. And when we speak of a life well lived, meaning to say that all factors, okay, all faculties of our lives or ourselves, all aspects of our life are being developed. Say, for example, even if you are a very positive person, because that is your value. And again, when I speak about value, what branch of philosophy I am referring to? Okay, going back, when we speak of happiness, some positivity as your value, no matter how much positive you are, it doesn't mean that you are really happy, because you can be very positive in life and yet you are suffering from financial constraints. Okay, you are suffering from debts, you are suffering from loans, for example. And so these are certain complications. So even if you are positive, but this area of one aspect of your life where you are deficient will actually be a challenge, or it attacks your other areas of life. That is why, if you may have noticed, that the standard of the world in terms of happiness is never lasting. It's always temporary. And such momentarily happiness is not what we mean by eudaimonia. Okay, because when we speak of eudaimonia, it is like it's somehow really resulting to a transcendence. Okay, self-actualization, or the highest peak of self-fulfillment, right? That is what we mean by real happiness. So in short, our challenge as an individual is to develop functionally all aspects of our lives, like the emotional aspects of our life, our intellectual aspect, or our mental health, for example, our physical health. Because even if you have a lot of finances, you are so rich but you are so weak, you are sickly, then it can also be a threat to your happiness. Okay, again, there is a different realm of real happiness in philosophy than our standard of happiness, because real happiness is what is meant by, okay, you are correct, it's eudaimonia. Now, when you do philosophy, okay, as I said earlier, that since philosophy is a love of wisdom, and when you love wisdom, or as a lover of wisdom, we continually ask questions about our existence, our life, our being as a person, and at the same time, asking question is philosophizing. And philosophizing means doing philosophy. And when you do philosophy through philosophizing, through asking questions, it is valuing philosophy. Now, when you value philosophy, or what is really the value of philosophy, it means here that you can question. You tend to question everything, but the very question is about the why. Alright? So when you know your why, it would be easier for you to figure out your how. So again, the question of the why of things. So I think, therefore I am, like, what is reality? Is truth relative? What is the meaning of life? These are some questions that we need to encounter or answer from time to time, because as we answer these questions, it presents us a certain kind of perspective which is deeper and wider in terms of breadth and scope. With that, we can truly value of the act or the gesture of philosophizing. Now, some things in this world are superficial, meaning that the seeming realities of the world, as what Father Moga is referring to, these are what we call as swirl of distractions. Meaning to say that sometimes, even if we want to be focused on things, there are a lot of distractions. Say, for example, as you listen to this video, you might be as well thinking of your other requirements from your other subjects, or you might be listening to a music, or you might be called by some members of the household, or there might be noise from outside, or there must be something within you that is attacking you, or you may have some questions in mind. These are all examples of swirl of distractions. And sometimes also we tend to have this kind of belief or notion about ourselves, which in a way, these are all superficial. Superficial because these are only seeming realities. And when we speak of seeming realities, these are not true reality after all, because these are only somehow like a certain kind of fakeness appearing to be true, but it's not exactly true. So in a way, we are chained. We chained ourselves to a cycle of spectacle about life, trying to question about the beauty of life is also a way of distracting ourselves from the very purpose of our existence. Or we could also look into the things that we value, because somehow, again, when we speak of value, what branch of philosophy I am referring to. Now, when we speak of the things that we value, there are things that we think it has value to us, but in the end we realize that these are all superficial, meaning to say these are not substantial as we live our life. Okay, these are only seeming reality. Say, for example, you value your phone so much, okay, that you believe, that you think that it's the end of your life if your phone will be dysfunctioning or will be destroyed. But if that is how you value your phone so much, why do we have the tendency to replace it with another? Okay? So that means to say that that's what I mean by superficial. That is why from time to time, as we go back to what Socrates have mentioned, that we need to examine our life. We need to examine our know thyself, knowing thyself, because an unexamined life is not worth living. So that is why from time to time, it's always good to pause for a moment, do some reflections, do some self-assessment, because out from that, you'll be able to generate an insight that will become a practical value or a practical wisdom that you can, when we speak of practical wisdom, what concept, what philosophical concept I am referring to. Okay, you can refer to it to the previous slide. So then again, there is a necessity of clarifying the meaning of things in our life. Okay, say for example, going back to what I have presented earlier, your phone. What is really the value of your phone in your life? And what is, because value, the value that we put to a thing represents the meaning of that thing to us in our life. And that can only be discovered through the act of philosophizing or doing philosophy. And doing the act of philosophizing is valuing philosophy, or that's the value of philosophizing. So in a way, this tells us that we need to clarify everything that we value in our lives. If these things are substantial or superficial. Okay? Is this essential or trivial? Right? So that we don't submit ourselves to the seeming realities of life, or as what Father Moga have mentioned, it is an example of the swirl of distractions. Through an act of philosophizing, an individual is able to engage in analysis and interpretation of concepts, definitions, and arguments and problems. And when we're able to do that, a certain kind of analysis and interpretation of your experience, you are able to acquire or create an insight. Again, the analysis or the process of analysis, we call it abstraction. Okay, the process of analyzing and interpreting our experience, for example, we call it abstraction. But the product of the analysis or the product of the interpretation or the interpretation itself, that is what we call as an insight. Abstraction as a process, insight as an output. All right, if there is a process, there must be an output, and the output we are referring to is an insight. Okay, now going back to an insight, it is a kind of seeing with the mind. Okay, a kind of seeing with the mind in the goal of realizing the meaning of something. All right, so if you are going to look at here in the picture, okay, we have here this one, is this an eyeglasses or, okay, this one, right? And this can be how you look at it. For some people, they choose to remain here. This is their view. This is how they see things. But for other people, they are looking here, the entire view. Sometimes our view on things or how we see things become too limiting. And when we speak of the limitations of knowledge, again, what philosophical concept I am referring to? Limitations of knowledge or learned ignorance, or it is to know that you do not know. What philosophical concept I am referring to? Okay, you are correct in there. That is what we call as docta ignorantia. So insight emerges when we are thrown into a situation of questioning life, right? Have you noticed, or did you experience it yourself, wherein you try to question your own experience. You try to question on why you have to go through with the kind of situation you are facing right now. And questioning, or putting yourself in that moment of questioning your life, there can be some certain sounds or a certain voice telling you. And this voice echoing in your mind, these are what we call as insights. And these insights have to be used. You have to make it functional to improve your life, to make your existence more meaningful and substantial. So, going back here in this picture, I am telling you that some of us may our view on things or our belief on things, because how we view influences our beliefs, and what we believe influences our concept of what is true or what is real. Sometimes we are only limited in here, but others have the tendency to view a bigger picture. So this presents us now the two types of insight. And what are these two types of insights? Or we call it, by the way, before going back to the two types of insights or two types of point of view, the way you look at things, this is what we call as point of view or perspective or mindset. And since I said earlier that we view things differently, that is why it presents us a different types of viewing or our point. When you say point, it's your reference, your vantage. Where do you stand in seeing things, in looking at things? So when we speak of point of view, it is a way, or it is a method of how one sees or perceives the reality or a phenomenon. Okay, again, when you speak of point of view, it refers to your ability to see, the way you look at or the way you see things, the way you perceive things, and your perception or your ability to look at, or your outlook, your mindset in life, which we are all referring to as a point of view, is highly contextual. Highly contextual. That is why even if we are seeing the same thing, even if we are experiencing the same situation, say for example, we are in this COVID-19, we are in this pandemic, and no one is excused from this emergency crisis that we are in. All of us are suffering from this crisis. Even if you are staying at home, even if you go outside, everybody is vulnerable or susceptible to this virus. But we experience the same thing, but we may differ as how we look at the situation, as how we take at the situation, and how we respond to the situation. That is why point of view is the angle of considering things, which shows us the opinion or feelings of the individuals involved in a situation. Point of view is an attitude of how one sees or thinks of something. Now, from time to time, we experience these two types, or these types of view, which I will be presenting later on. Okay, it's not that from the time of birth until the time of your death you only uphold one point of view. No, from time to time we do experience. There are cases wherein our experience is just this, just like what we can see in the lens. Okay, that's the kind of lens we are seeing. But there are also instances wherein we are looking at the bigger picture. We go beyond or transcendence. This reminds us again that philosophy is an eternal quest for truth. It is a lifelong process of attaining the real virtue or wisdom, perfected through our excellence. Okay, so it is an attitude. So there are different types of point of view. There is what we call as partial point of view. There is also what we call as the holistic point of view. So this now tells us about the importance of each point of view. But before I'm going to proceed on the next slide, you can actually pause this video and get your writing materials and try to define in your own words what do you mean by partial point of view and what do you mean by holistic point of view using the picture presented here or the image presented here. Which one is a partial point of view and which one is a holistic point of view? And after identifying, you can define the partial and the holistic using the picture. I will probably give you 3 minutes to answer these questions in your paper. But again, if you don't want to answer that way or to respond that way, you can just look at the picture and answer it mentally. Okay? 3 minutes starts now. Right, so assuming that you are done and you are now playing again this video, so your task earlier was to look at which in the picture which is as presented in the picture is the partial point of view or the holistic point of view, and what is your idea now using the picture of partial and holistic. Now let's proceed. By the way, as we go along with the succeeding slide, you try to go back to your answer and let's check. Okay, you try to have a self-assessment of whether or not your responses there are the same with what is written in the slide. It doesn't have to be necessarily exactly the same in terms of words. What's important is the thought. Alright? So, a partial point of view is a perspective based on one of the component of the whole, meaning that it's not the whole in itself. What is being given focus is only the person, only the part. Okay, so that is why if you have, say for example, wherever you are right now, and if you have a phone, you try to take a picture. Okay, you try to take a picture of your surrounding, or let's say for example your immediate environment right now, and the first picture is you can take that one, how do you call that, wherein it's standing. Okay, so you can take that one, I forgot the term. Okay, so you can take that one this way, and the next one is you can take it this way. All right, so how do you call it? It's in my mind, but I know you know the term. I don't need to expound on that. Okay, you can take it this way and you can take it that way, and then take note that you are taking a picture on the same view, but you try to compare the two shots. Okay, you try to compare the two shots. Is there a difference? Okay, is there a difference? And as you try to point out the difference, if there is, what is it telling you, right? And if this is what is it telling you, then how is it reflected to your own life? How is it manifested in your real life experiences? If you take a shot this way, okay, if you take the shot this way, what is given more focus? And as you take the shot this way, did it change the view somehow? What you need to point out is the changes, because the changes will tell you how limiting sometimes our point of view is. So that is why when we see something, or when we try to make a statement of something, it's always good to go back to our point of view. What's your basis? How do you look at it? Did you only base it on what you can see in the surface? Which is what is meant here by a partial point of view. What are you giving focus? When you are going to see something, when you are going to look at something, what's your focus? That is a more important question than what you actually see. Okay, because your focus or what you give focus is telling you what you are seeing. And once you shift your focus, you may see differently. You may see a different thing that you failed to see at the start. Okay, and that is what we mean by point of view. So a partial point of view is only offering to us what we can see in the surface. Okay, usually the partial point of view, it kind of be very egoistic because the focus is ourselves. The focus is what we can see at the moment. And sometimes we have this kind of attitude to be more reacting or to be more reactive instead of proactive. We become reactive because we are so constrained with our seeing of things. Right? We fail to realize that beyond what we see is a shadow of an unknown truth that we need to discover. That is why, from a partial point of view, we shall move to a greater landscape, and that is a holistic point of view. Holistic point of view, or holism, it comes from the Greek word holos, which literally means all. Okay, holos means all or entire or totality. It is a school of thought that maintains the interdependence of factors. Take note, we are not only referring to a single factor or a single aspect, but we are talking about factors, meaning there are more than one components of or parts that we need to see together, not separately, not individually. And putting or collating all of these parts together, it is maintaining the interdependence of factors to another agencies or casualities. So hence, a holistic perspective broadens our understanding of reality by taking considerations of other possible causal agents or factors that may contribute in understanding a phenomenon. Say for example, what could be a very concrete example? Say for example, which is sometimes very common. We experience this one from time, specifically during from the time that it was still the old normal. Have you experienced that wherein you came home late, and the moment you open the door and your parents are already ranting or scolding you why you arrive home late, and they ask questions like, why are you late? Why you just arrived now? What time is your dismissal? What have you done? Where have you been? Something like that. And the moment you open up your mouth to seek for justifications or for answers, then they also get wild because like you're answering to their questions is also a kind of attacking them of their authority. So that is why you have the tendency to dismiss that one. So that is an example of a comparison of the partial and the holistic point of view. So here, sometimes or more often than not, partial point of view would lead us to doubts. Okay, it will lead us to doubts. It will lead us to certain kind of questioning about the reality presented to us at the moment. And at the same time, it will also tell us about how limiting our knowledge is. Again, how limiting our knowledge is, what philosophical concept I am referring to. Hence, in a holistic perspective, we don't only focus on what we can see at the moment, what's on the horizon, but we also look at the invisible, the intangible, the things that are beyond our absorption capacity, the things beyond our ability to understand. Hence, we seek to investigate. And when we investigate for seeking for the truth, it is an act of philosophizing. It is an act of doing philosophy or value of philosophy. Okay? So, in the picture, you have here an example of the six blind men. Actually, you can read this one. If you have time, you can read it further. There's an article about the six blind men and the elephant. Okay, but here in the picture, there it shows about the six blind men, and each of them, because they are blind, each of them is touching the same elephant. Okay, they are touching the same elephant, but they are touching different parts of an elephant. One is touching here at this portion or the tail, and he believed that an elephant is like a rope, while the other one is touching this portion, and the sturdiness of the this portion here makes him believe that the elephant is a tree, while the other one is touching here, and he believed that it's a snake. While here, because of the sharpness of the object he is touching, he believed that it's a spear. But here, one blind man was touching on the wideness of the ear of the elephant, and he believed that the elephant is a fan, while the other one is the wideness of the tummy or the belly, and he believed that it's a wall. Now take note that all of them are touching the same elephant, but each of them is touching a different part of the elephant. But as they begin to believe that the idea of reality now is basically based or concentrated on what they are touching. Okay, and since one, say for example this one, touched the widest area of the elephant, then he believed that elephant is a wall. This is the kind of, and this, since this is his experience, this is what he thinks, this is what he perceives, and what he perceives is what he believes, and what he believes is what he is convinced as his reality or as his truth. Now, it is true as far as we talk about his experience. But if we begin to compare now the experience of this blind man to the experience of the other blind men, to the rest of the blind men, then you can see differences in perspectives, differences in point of view, because they differ in their context, they differ in their experience. To an extent, it will create an opportunity of conflict. But that conflict is not meant to destroy the relationship of these blind men, of these six blind men, but rather that conflict is an opportunity for these blind men to sit down and have a conversation. Because again, as what Aristotle have mentioned, which was supported by Plato, that the question and answer approach of philosophy, again, what philosophical thought I am referring to, question and answer, that question and answer must be conversational. And when I speak of conversational, what do I mean by that? Hence, they have to sit down together and have a dialogue. Because after all, the inquiry of philosophy is dialogical. And when they become, when they open up themselves for a conversation, they are now exposing their own vulnerabilities. They are now exposing their own limitations of knowledge. And when we speak of knowledge, what branch of philosophy I am referring to, and limitations of knowledge, what philosophical concept I am referring to. So they then begin to discover that they are, or that they have this learned ignorance. And it takes only an amount of openness and humility to accept the idea of others. That is what we mean by holistic point of view or holistic perspective. So each experience of the blind man is a partial point of view or holistic point of view? Yes, it is a partial point of view. But when can that experience be a holistic point of view? Yes, you are correct. It is when they sit together and look at or consider or be open to the experience of others. This is what we mean here by other possible causal agents or factors that may contribute our understanding of a phenomenon. So if I were to ask you, which perspective presents a bigger understanding or a deeper understanding of things? Is it the partial or the holistic point of view? And why do you say so? Okay, now taking from these examples I have presented, or my explanation on this presented, the question that you need to ponder on: how these things I've mentioned earlier relate to your own experience. Okay, you may take 3 minutes to answer that question. Again, you can take a pause in this video while you are answering this question, or you can just answer that reflectively. Okay, thank you very much. So let's proceed now to our next item. So we have here a comparison, as a recap, a comparison of the two point of views, partial and holistic point of view. So when we speak of partial point of view, it looks only at a limited number of aspects to the given problem or situation. Whereas in a holistic point of view, it looks at all aspects of the given problem or situation. And these aspects are not visible as of the moment. That is why you need to search more. You need to investigate, because that is the nature of philosophy as an eternal quest for truth. It also refers to all aspects are given importance when making conclusion, so that your conclusion or your view of things will become impartial, not biased. Okay, not stereotyping. In partial point of view, conclusions are made based on considering some, but not all, sides of the problem or situation. Meaning you only base it from what you see. But once you consider other people's experience, other people's point of view, you are now shifting from the partial to a holistic point of view. Because a holistic point of view, all aspects are tied together to form a general overview of the problem of situation. That is why it's called holistic, because you take it as a whole. You take in its totality. And its totality speaks of essence more than presence. By the way, if you would like, as I told you earlier, that if you would like to know more about this one, you can read The Sixth Blind Man and the Elephant. And add on to that, you can also read about or watch a video about The Allegory of the Cave by Plato. These two, The Allegory of the Cave and The Sixth Blind Man and the Elephant, will tell you more about your experience of partial point of view and holistic point of view. Okay, and here, so for Gabriel Marquez, or not Gabriel Marquez, because he is the in the 21st century literature. For Gabriel Marcel, for Gabriel Marcel, when we open ourselves to the idea of the perspectives of others, it will also invite us to do some necessary reflections. And when we do reflect, there comes a realization of how wrong can we be. Again, this is not to criticize or to condemn every one of the mistakes that we have committed, but it's only about embracing a certain kind of reality that our nature as human beings is we have that capacity to make mistakes, because making mistakes is part of our imperfections as human beings. Okay, that is why, fortified by our experience, these mistakes of ours will also allow us to have that kind of that how do you call that, as a willingness to improve, willingness to learn, okay, and to correct our mistakes. So Gabriel Marcel says that reflection has its roots in the daily flow of life. Again, daily flow of life. So meaning to say that we need to give attention or focus to our experiences in a day. Okay? Although it's only a single day, but there are a multitude of experiences that we encounter, and each experience can provide us an insight, a lesson to live by, not just to learn. Okay, a lesson to live by, not just to learn, because this will help us to improve our life, so that it will lead us to the nearness of the attainment of real happiness. Again, when I speak of real happiness, what philosophical concept I am referring to? Alright, you are correct. We call it eudaimonia, or a life well lived. Okay? This action is what we call the act of reflection. And when you do the act of reflection, what does it mean? It means to reflect about what the truth is all about. Again, take note that truth as our experience can be journeyed upon. It can be journeyed upon as long as we learn to relate with our experience in the context of the experience of others. So going back to the example of the 6 blind men and the elephant, and those prisoners in the allegory of the cave, and those prisoners in the cave, if they remain firm of what they are seeing, then they don't, or they deny themselves of the truth that they are supposed to discover. That is why from time to time, ladies and gentlemen, it always tells us about that we need in life, we need to have certain contextual stretch. Okay, contextual stretch. What did I mean, or what do I mean by contextual stretch? It means to say that you don't limit yourself to your own context, but rather you also begin to entertain other people's way of seeing things, because as you entertain how people see things and how different can it be from how you look at it, it will improve your own ways of seeing things. Okay, so I just like the same thing with the point of view, wherein we have 2 types of point of view. What are these 2 types of point of view again? Alright, so you're correct. There are 2 types of point of view. We have partial and holistic point of view. Same thing in reflection. There are also 2 types of reflection. One is primary reflection. So when we say primary reflection, it refers to the process directed at deriving clear concepts about reality, what we can see as of the moment. That is our primary reflection, because even if these are the things we see at the moment, it will allow us to, it tells us a certain truth as well. Okay, it tells us a certain truth, and that truth that we discover is part of the reflection, is a product of our reflection. Primary reflection is also based on observable phenomena. That is why I said earlier, what you can see at the moment, what you experience at the moment, what you encounter at the moment. It is based on observable phenomena wherein the qualities of things are seen by the observer. Okay, this refers to the tangible. You can see it, or you can feel it, or you can touch it, or you can sense it, or you can taste it. Example, shape, color, function. These are, and seeing all these things will tell you a certain truth. But then again, if we are going to compare primary reflection from the two types of, from the 2 points of view, which is it more related to? Is primary reflection more related to partial point of view or to a holistic point of view? Whatever is your choice, what is your justification? Right? Remember that as what Aristotle have mentioned, that the Socratic method, again, what's the another term for Socratic method? Yes, it's Elenchus. For Elenchus, meaning to say that it's not enough that you say something or you state or make a statement of something as a manifestation of knowing, but rather you have to be ready to justify it or to make counter arguments of it. That is why, going back to my question, whatever your answer of this one is, what's your justification? Because it's not enough to make a choice, right? It's not enough to make a choice, but rather you have to stand with your choice. And also, it's not enough that you can stand with your choice, but it's a question of how long can you stand with your choice. So that is about primary reflection. Now let's proceed to the next type of reflection. By the way, primary reflection is getting to know the facts that tell us about the various attributes of things, allow us to form our objective knowledge of the world. Because it's objective, it means it's something accurate or it's something concrete. However, that is not the only type of truth about the world or knowledge about the world that we should be looking into. Thus, we also entertain another type of reflection, and that is secondary reflection. So when we speak of secondary reflection, it is the realization of unity of the situation and the individual, which provides us with a holistic view of reality. So if your answer earlier, if you associate with primary reflection as a partial point of view, so in reality, secondary reflection can be associated closely with holistic point of view. From the word itself, holistic view of reality. The subject is part of the thing that is being investigated. So, meaning to say that this tells us about your connectedness of a greater scheme of things. As I said in part 1 of this video, that your existence, although it matters, but it matters more when you're able to relate it with the existence of other people. And also, whatever is happening around the world in your immediate community, it has something to do with your own existence. It influences or it challenges your own existence. And with that, what type of philosophy or what branch of philosophy I am referring to? The social issues or the social concerns around you has an ability to influence your own existence. And speaking of existence, what branch of philosophy is that? Alright? So, secondary reflection is looking into all other aspects that are not considered at the very beginning. So it's a more of transcendent. So secondary reflection, if in the first stage we are only concerned on the tangible qualities of an entity, in this stage the experience of a person on a certain thing is already considered. Alright? So in a primary reflection, you only take credit on what you can see, what you can feel, what you can hear, what you can touch. But in the secondary reflection, it's giving credit on the experience of other people. Thus, the justification becomes more substantial or essential because the experience of the person is given value more than the experience of how you see things. Again, how we view at things or how we look at things, we are always influenced by our own experience with our own context, but not because it's what we experience, it's what is true. Because we need to have, again, as I said, we need to have that certain kind of contextual stretch, giving consideration of the experience of others. Thus, same thing, we have a comparison here of primary reflection and secondary reflection. In primary reflection, it makes us see clarity in things because it's what's visible, what's tangible. But in secondary reflection, it invites us to go to deeper into ourselves. Deeper into ourselves because we look at other aspects or other factors that are not visible. So we try to explore further and further. And as we have a wider reach of our exploration, it gives us a deeper knowledge. And that lead us to a deeper understanding, and that deeper understanding will lead us to the real virtue of wisdom, which is in a way very practical. Primary reflection refers to the process of deriving at clear concepts because we can visibly see it. Okay, but in secondary reflection, we are led to see the truth that is inside our inner selves. And take note, our inner selves are difficult to maneuver. It's difficult to explore. Because as we begin to journey with ourselves, when we start to question who am I, comes the denial of the reality that it tries to present us. Putting in context with the example of the allegory of the cave, since these prisoners have been there for a long period of time, they've been imprisoned in the cave, and there's that certain kind of light presenting to them on the mouth of the cave. Once a certain prisoner will get out from the cave, as he begin to experience the ray of light at the start, there is that kind of pain, or how do you call it, sensory pain, because he is not used to see the light. Just the same experience when you are inside in your house, and so you are only concentrated with the darkness or the kind of light that's there in your house, which is usually dark in a way. But when you go outside, sometimes there's an eyesore, right? And the same thing, if we're going to associate that light to the bigger truth or the absolute truth, and the light that we experience inside the cave, or the dark that we experience inside the cave or inside our house, is the truth that we try to believe based on our perceptions, based on our beliefs. So when we begin to open the door, or when we begin to get out from the cave, we experience an eyesore because it tells us that there are truths that are painful. And because these truths are painful, we try to avoid it from time to time. Thus comes our denial. We deny a certain existence of the truth because we are not ready to accept such truth. Right? So here, in primary reflection, is based on observable phenomena. Okay, what you can, again, the tangible. But in secondary reflection, this type of reflection performs a unifying role whereby it gathers and unites together all the fragments of our experience. Okay, our experience can be fragmented. Okay, or it could be your experience is a fragment of the bigger truth, and the experience of another is another fragment of the of such truth. Sorry, and once we begin to collate it together, then becomes holistic. The truth is like a puzzle. Okay, the truth is like a puzzle, and every experience is a piece of a puzzle. The greater challenge is how can we make it that we are like pieces of a puzzle, and coming together will make us a better whole. Right? So in primary reflection, the perceivable qualities of things are experienced by the observer, meaning the focus is yourself. That is why it's kind of egoistic. But in secondary reflection, we come to a realization of the inseparability of the situation or of the event and the individual, meaning that there is already a connection or that interconnectedness of the observer and the object of the observation. So it brings awareness of ourselves and our very existence. Our existence in life will tell us that life is full of problems and it's full of mystery. And these problems and mysteries will make life worth living, will make life more meaningful. Because when we don't deny ourselves of that experience of facing the challenges, facing the problems in life, it comes also with the empowering experience of how we are supposed to face such kind of challenges. And when able to make it through, then we can finally say that I am better now. You become a better version of yourself because of the things that you know. What branch of philosophy of that? Because of the things of you value. What branch of philosophy is that? Because of the things of your own thinking. What branch of philosophy of that? Because of the things that you experience around your community, around the society, or the issues around this. What kind of experience of that? Because of your appreciation or the beauty of the experience or the beauty of the world. What type of philosophy is that? And this gives meaning to your existence. That is why in the philosophy of the human person, we talk about the what of the person or the nature of the person, the who of the person or the person itself, and the why of the person or the existence of the person as a human being. Thus, in this subject, Introduction to the Philosophy of the Human Person, what's given the core, what's given more important is that you yourself, your own experience. And I hope that in this video, you're able to, or you can now distinguish a partial point of view from a holistic point of view. And you can compare and contrast holistic from partial and primary reflection and to secondary reflection. And more importantly, you will be able to see the connection of these things, of these philosophical concepts in your own life. Life becomes very limiting if you stop learning, if you stop thinking, if you stop asking questions. Because take note, in philosophy, as a lover of wisdom, it is the eternal quest of truth. And truth stems from not from the answers to our questions, but to the very questions itself that we wish to answer. Therefore, questions are more essential than the answer, because it gives us the process of becoming as a human person. Alright, I hope that you are learning something, and before this video will end, you may take 3 minutes perhaps to write your own reflection from this discussion. You can write it in your paper, or you can just have it your own personal consumption. You can have it mentally. And I hope that this video have really lived its purpose as a learning material for your monthly examination. So God bless in your first monthly exam, and I hope you are doing well. Alright, so thank you and bye bye.